You know, I've thought about doing this video for the longest time, but I couldn't. Because I don't want to make this video, to be honest. So I never grew up with the original Spider-Man trilogy. I don't think I ever really heard about them. I think I saw Spider-Man 3, like I saw parts of it on TV every once in a while. But I never really saw the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy. Um, I don't think I ever heard anyone talk about them. I don't even think my own father, who, he's, obviously older than me, so, but he never really talked about them. I never heard anyone talk about these movies. So, I was very young. I think I was about 8 or 10 years old. 2012 rolls around. And the amazing, I think it was 2012, or was it 2010? I don't know anymore, honestly. But, I saw Amazing Spider-Man in theaters. And, you don't really have, I guess, a critical mind with stuff when you're, like, that young. You kind of just enjoy whatever's fun and entertaining to watch. And, Amazing Spider-Man was fun and entertaining to watch. And I liked it. I really liked it. I enjoyed it. People liked it. Cool. There wasn't a big internet hate for it like there is now. And I would say it's partially justified, it's partially not. They're just meh. It's just a meh movie. Amazing Spider-Man 2 comes out. I didn't like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 at first. I thought parts of it were fun. They're just like, eh. But I was like, yeah, I still enjoy this. I remember having, like, the Jamie Foxx Electro poster on the wall. It was a very ugly poster, now that I'm thinking about it. I just thought the character looked cool. I had an Amazing Spider-Man popcorn bucket. I remember being a jerk and, like, spoiling the movie for my grandparents on purpose. Like, what a jerk I was. It was a really bad movie, so, but still, like, that was messed up of me to do. I don't even know why I did that. Did I do it on purpose? I don't even remember. I feel bad about that, though. To this day, I feel horrible. But yeah, I just, like everybody, I guess, Spider-Man's been a part of my life, but he's not been like a major part of my life. I didn't start getting into comics until I was about 13, 14, 15 years old. Spider-Man was one of my favorites to start out with, because, when you're a kid, it's like, Spider-Man! I love Spider-Man. And, I went through a phase, like a couple years ago, where I was kind of going through some of the older Marvel and DC movies. So, like, I sat down, I watched all the XMen movies, and they were fun. And then, I watched all the Batman movies, like, Michael Keaton Batman, and, Val Kilmer and George Clooney. But, and then I watched Spider-Man. And I was like, holy cow. Because, with those other movies, it's like Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, they're not good. They don't hold up anymore. The X-Men movies, some of them are good, but the majority of them suck. And, I don't want to be mean to it, I guess. But, they were made at a time where the stuff that they did in that movie was socially acceptable. It was okay to do the crap that they did in that movie. And, it was really innovative for the time. But when you watch them now, we have way better movies than that. They're not very good. The special effects in them don't hold up anymore. A lot of the acting and kind of weird storytelling devices and the characters and how they change them around from the comics just wouldn't be socially acceptable in a movie nowadays. But back then, it was really cool. It was great for the time. Now, it's just like this movie doesn't hold up again anymore, and they're not really worth watching, at least the first one. I would say the only ones worth watching are X-Men 2, Days of Future Past, and First Class. That's it. Of course, you could say Logan and Deadpool and Deadpool 2. Those are different. They're kind of more spin-offs. They're not connected to the main X-Men movies. And, X-Men 3 is not canon. X-Men Origins Wolverine is a terrible movie. Just nobody should watch that. The Wolverine's okay, I don't know why that one gets hated on as much as it does. And also, it's just not talked about either that much. So it's hated on, and it's not talked about, but when it is, it's hated on. I don't really understand it. It's not that bad. It's not great either, but it's not that bad. And Apocalypse is overly hated on. It's not good, but it's not terrible. I didn't even bother watching Dark Phoenix. Probably will one day, just so I can say, hey, I've seen all the X-Men movies, but, Anyways, also, I'm forgetting to mention, I am sick, so if my voice sounds off, that's why. But, Spider-Man, right? The Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans hold up. Not everywhere they don't. There's the costumes that they use in that movie, like Green Goblin's suit, would not be socially acceptable today. And some people are like, the cheesy vibe wouldn't be socially acceptable today. I'll get to that in a minute, but hell yeah, it would. X-Men are very bland movies. They're very blandly directed. Most superhero movies are. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies aren't. They're really well-made movies. Like the cinematography, the editing, the score, even a lot of the acting is really good, even though they're kind of goofy and cheesy performances. But that's the point. Here's why I think the cheesy tone works. Sam Raimi was influenced by the 80s 60s Spider-Man comics. He didn't really care about the 90s and 80s stuff. That's why he didn't want Venom in the third Spider-Man movie. He hated Venom, at least reportedly he hated Venom, because he wasn't into those comics. He was trying to get the tone down of the 60s Spider-Man comics, which, by the way, are some of the most important, best Spider-Man stories ever written from that era. Steve Ditko and Stan Lee's stories from that era are amazing. And they're some of the best Spider-Man stories ever written. We are still being influenced by the stuff that they did within those stories. So if you don't like these movies, I almost feel like you don't like Spider-Man, because this is how Spider-Man is. And that's why I don't like the new stuff. Like The Amazing Spider-Man. I'm not talking about Venom in this, because Venom is a different movie. It exists. It's not good. It's entertaining, but it's honestly a harmless movie. And but that is what Spider-Man is, and why he works. It's cheesy, yeah. And if you can't get into the cheese, fine. You can't get into it. And you prefer the newer stuff. That's okay. I know people who do that. I'm not going to crap on you and go blah, blah, blah. But when you're going out there telling people these movies suck and they don't hold up, you're just wrong. Because, there are aspects, yes, that do not hold up. But the cheesy vibe is the point. It is the point of the movie. It is not dated, because that's the point. The point of the movie is to be cheesy, like the 60s comics, and have this goofier tone. And it gets to the core of what Spider-Man is. Spider-Man is just a guy. He's a slubby, nerdy kind of geek. He's a nerd. He's kind of pathetic. He just has bad crap happen to him, and it just kind of happens. And all the villains in these movies are tied to Peter. They don't just materialize, right? In the Amazing Spider-Man movies, the only one I can think of that really relates to Peter are the ones in the Amazing Spider-Man, but they're not good. They're bad. Electro's almost as bad as Jim Carrey's Riddler from Batman Forever. Jim Carrey's a great actor. Can be super funny. He's terrible in those movies, and no one, or in that movie, not movies. But he is kind of like that, and like he just kind of becomes evil out of nowhere. Like he has a relationship with Peter. He forgets his name or whatever. But like, what's the relationship? In the first Spider-Man, Green Goblin is set up to be William Dafoe's character, right? He's set up to admire Peter, and he likes him. This is a person that Peter respects, and he respects Peter. That's why he has multiple opportunities to kill Peter throughout the movie and just doesn't. But then he slowly goes insane and, of course, dies at the end. I guess spoilers for a movie that's like 20 years old now, pretty much. So, kind of, you should go watch this movie. But, you know, like all the villains within the movies have a relationship to Peter. Even Venom, which is I would say the only one that doesn't is Sandman. Which, sure, Sandman. Sandman, though, is okay. Like, that's fine. But Venom has a relationship to Peter. You know, and, you know, so that's why I love the old movies. That's not all the reasons. I will review these movies one day. But that's kind of the essential reason why I love the older movies. I also love Spider-Verse. I think, but I'll get to that in a minute. But I think the original Spider-Man trilogy are the best live-action interpretations of Spider-Man. Because they get to the point of what Spider-Man is. He's this geek. He has terrible things happen to him. And he also has a blend of real life problems, like he can't always get the girl. He's gonna lose his job. He can't pay his rent. You know, these are what Spider-Man does. I know that sounds boring to people. Like, this is kind of what Superman is too. Like, Superman isn't the powers. Superman is a normal dude with normal people issues. Like, he's a dork. Like, Clark Kent is a dork. Like Spider-Man, and he likes saving people, so he saves people. You know, but Spider-Man's is more like great power comes great responsibility. Because again, like in Spider-Man 2, he gives up his powers. You know, but he knows it's the right thing to do. That's why he saves people, and that's what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. So I hate these Tom Holland movies, and I'm done watching Spider-Man. Here's the thing. I'm sick of Spider-Man. It has been 20 years. Okay? 20. And we have gotten 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 movies. If you count Avengers, the Avengers movie Spider-Man's appeared in. Actually, that'd be 13. And Venom. But if you don't count that, like 10 no, like, what would it be? So you got 9 Spider-Man movies. 9 Spider-Man movies within 20 years. Now put this into constellation. Batman. Had Batman 1989. 2 years later, we got Batman Returns. Then there was a reboot of Batman a couple years later. Then it was Batman and Robin. They stopped making Batman movies all the way to 2008. Now, Batman is a more popular, if not a little less so, character than Spider-Man. But, like, think about that. Batman and Robin came out, I think, 1998 or 1997, something like that. We didn't get another Batman movie till 2008. Or 2007, I think. That's 10 years. Or over 10 years, something like that. And think about it now. We have tons of, like, animated Batman stuff and very different Batman stuff. But really, Spider-Man hasn't had that many different interpretations. Like, it's the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, Amazing Spider-Man, which is kind of a darker take, but not really. It's just kind of more muted colors and stuff. And then you got Tom Holland Spider-Man, which is just like really bland, kind of generic Spider-Man, even though it's not really Spider-Man. I'll get to that in a minute. And Spider-Verse, which is very different. So I'm sick of the character because he's overhyped. He's in too many movies in too short a time. There hasn't been enough time in between these things to really get synced into it. I know some people don't mind that. Like, Homecoming wasn't that bad of a movie. But when I watched it, I was just bored. Because, I mean, number one, the movie wasn't very good. It was okay. It was just kind of meh. But, like, when I watched the movie, I was just sitting there, like, unengaged. Because it was just like, I've seen so much Spider-Man that I'm now bored of Spider-Man. Like, how do you make a character literally called Spider-Man a superhero? Excuse me, a character with literally super in what he is. Like, kind of hard to make that character boring. But they managed to. And, like, I don't like the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. They're not Spider-Man. Okay? Okay, so, you know what? Homecoming was okay. Because, like, what they did with the Vulture, I thought, well, alright, this is okay. I just hope they don't do this all the time. They changed too much of Spider-Man. Like, for no reason. Aunt May is a hot slut. Basically, kind of. I don't want to be like that, but that's kind of what they made her. And, like, I like Aunt May as the older person she's supposed to be, because that's who the character is, right? Like, there's no reason that they need to change her, but they did. They made, like, Flash Thompson just some random kind of jerkish kid, and not the intimidating, like, actual bully character that he is in the comics. They made MJ Zendaya, which some people like that. I can't say I completely hate it or am against it, but, like, huh? What they did with Shocker was really weird. Like, he was just a random character within the movie that died, and then there became, like, a new Shocker, and, like, you could honestly take him out of the movie and it would change nothing. So that was really stupid. And, like, they just changed characters. They made Spider-Man kind of Iron Man with, like, the suit, right? And he's, like, and it talks to him, and it's, like, it's stupid. Because this isn't what Spider-Man is. And he doesn't have relatable high school problems. They made it like a Ferris Bueller's Day Off kind of John Hughes type comedy. I love John Hughes movies. They're great movies. But they clearly don't understand what made those movies work. And they're not. And you can't make that with Spider-Man. Because that's not what Spider-Man is. Like, those aren't realistic teen movies. If you want realistic high school stories with Spider-Man, you know, him blowing off things with his friends for him to have no repercussions for it isn't what would happen. Like, he should get in fights with people in his age, like, in Homecoming. He constantly leaves and come back. There should be more people questioning, where'd you go? And then, like, you know, him blowing off things with friends and then, you know, getting in bad situations. The only time I feel like in the story where he's actually affected by a choice he has to make, which this is the most Spider-Man moment, is when he stops Vulture and breaks off his date with Liz, the girl he wants to be with. But, like, that storyline is kind of just taken from a comic, and not like the whole exact thing, but, like, there's a shot where he lists himself a rebel, and like that's a really powerful moment in the comic. I'm forgetting the name of the comic, but it's one of the best Spider-Man stories ever written. Not nearly as good as that, but like, you know, you get what I mean. They just change stuff, and they don't have the relatable element that the Tobey movies did, which is like, he's just a normal dude who has Spider-Man powers. And like, I wanted to see a Spider-Man movie with him like in high school, and that would have been different, you know, because in the Tobey movies, he was in high school for one movie. Next movie, they graduate and they're like adults and they're moving on to careers, which is cool. Like, that's a fun place to take the movies. But so like this would have been a different interpretation had they nailed it. Didn't work, no. And then I was okay with Vulture because I thought it worked okay for the movie. But then when you get to like Mysterio in Far From Home, I hate Far From Home. These movies try to be comedies and they're not good at it. They're not funny. They're just really dumb. Like, I guess that's more of a subjective thing, but like, when I'm watching them, like, I can hardly tell they're trying to make jokes because the delivery is off. These movies aren't very well directed either, and the score, these aren't necessary to happen, but like, you know, they just make the movies better. Like, Far From Home, when you see all these beautiful locations, these real locations they filmed on, like around the world, and they don't even move the camera enough so you can see these locations and you know, get a taste of the scenery while watching the characters within the scene. This is not necessary, but it would just make the movie more enjoyable and just make it an overall better presented, well-made movie. But like, it's not necessary, but like what really bugs me is they're not Spider-Man. And like I said, Mysterio really bugs me because he's in the movie for like, he's in the movie and his like whole motivation with the like Spider-Man the Iron Man goggles, they keep tying Spider-Man to Iron Man, and they're not making him Spider-Man. They're trying to make him the next Iron Man and like fit him into this MCU story before they just make a Spider-Man story, which is terrible because he's Spider-Man. And they didn't do this with any other character in the MCU. They didn't take them and like try to fit them in the MCU. The only character I can think about that they did that with is Captain Marvel. But like Captain Marvel, it's just because they kept trying to hype that character up and like slide her into this weird point in time. And also she's from space, and so she also has like a lot more complicated backstory. So there's kind of a reason for it, even though Captain Marvel's terrible and the way they put her into these movies is terrible. Just from what I've heard. Yeah, I've not actually watched Captain Marvel, and I never will. Because, dear God, I never want to watch it. You know, and the villains aren't tied to Spider-Man. They're tied to Iron Man. And we'll see if they can kind of change this in Spider-Man 3, but I don't know. And there's a couple more things I want to talk about before I get to my main point. I'm okay with changes to the character. I don't want people to think, no. I'm not okay with them changing a character, right? As long as it benefits the character. Like, for example, Spider-Verse. Miles Morales is basically Peter Parker. He is very different from the comics, like in the Spider-Verse movie. He is very much like Peter Parker. He is Peter Parker, just black. I know that sounds racist, But that's because it is. They just made him Black Peter Parker. They wrote this character because Obama became president and a comic book author thought, you know what? It's time we give the world a Black Spider-Man. Which, it's forced representation. Which, this is why I hate movies and TV shows they announce. Where they're like, hey, we're going to make it a female-led thing. Hey, we're going to make it star this black person. I'm like, I don't care who's in the movie. As long as it's a freaking good movie. But they don't care about that when they announce things like that. Or they try to push that, right? That Ghostbusters movie was a terrible movie. They don't care about making a good movie. They just want to make a movie with women so that way they could say, hey, internet, look at us, we're cool because we made a movie with women. And like, movie bomb, nobody saw it because it was a bad movie. Right? I don't care that that some black person's in my Spider-Man movie, right? I love Miles Morales now because they changed the character and made him better. He's his own character, and literally the point of the story in Spider-Verse is that he has to differentiate himself from the other Spider-Mans and become his own Spider-Man, which is fascinating. They changed up his world, his characters. You got a female Doc Ock, which is not something in the comics. You got a different version of the Kingpin, not too much different, but still different. Spider-Gwen is kind of different from the comics. You got this kind of fat hobo Peter, which is Peter B. Parker, which is one of my favorite characters in any movie ever. I'm serious. I love that character in this movie. And he's not like normal Spider-Man. And it's good. And even the Spider-Man they do show you that's closer to like what normally Spider-Man would be, he has blonde hair. He's not normal Spider-Man. And like all of this is okay because it benefits the story. There's a reason for them to change it. My problem with the Tom Holland movies is they change characters for no reason. Absolutely no reason. It's bad writing. You shouldn't do that. Ever. You shouldn't change things just because. And I get it. They want to differentiate themselves from the other Spider-Man movies. Okay? But focusing more on Peter in high school, giving us more relatable stories, would have differentiated it from the other Spider-Man movies. Because, yeah, you don't see a lot of Peter in school in those other Spider-Man movies. So it would have been different if they did that. Also, before anyone comes at me and says, Spider-Man 3 sucks, and they can come at me with that dance, you misunderstand Spider-Man 3. Okay, yes, Spider-Man 3 has some really stupid parts. But it has some really stupid parts just like the other movies. And they're in the same vein as the other movies. Some of them are really dumb and kind of inexcusable. Like that part where Sandman falls inside that like kind of weird area with all that sand and how he becomes the Sandman. Great sequence, but when he falls in there and he's like, there's been a change in the silicon mass. And he's like, it's probably just a bird. Like, a bird really has the weight of a human being? And, like, you're going to kill a bird? Because, like, that would have killed them. The bird, probably. Like, that's kind of messed up. Like, there's stupid things like that. But then you come at me and go, the dance. Okay, look, the dance has been made fun of, but it's honestly not that bad. The point of the story is that Peter thinks he's being edgy and cool by doing that. He's a dork. It's supposed to be bad and cringy. You're supposed to cringe at the dance. That's the point. Like, it baffles my mind how much people complain about the stupid aspect of this movie that's so insignificant, and it's the point of the movie. It's supposed to be funny. And it is. Like, I'm serious. So, I guess I'm going to get into my final points here. I'm just done seeing Spider-Man movies because they've just made so many over time that I'm done. I don't want to see Spider-Man movies anymore. And, maybe taking a break. I'll still see Spider-Verse because Spider-Verse is a very different take. That doesn't count. But in terms of, like, MCU stuff, done with Spider-Man. In terms of Venom, Morbius, just garbage like that, I just don't want to see. And I'm done with it. And, so I'm going to stop doing it. And I'm going to vote with my wallet. And people want to still see it, cool. I'm glad you guys can still enjoy that stuff. But I'm just done. And I just want to explain kind of my frustration and my feelings I've had for a while. And just kind of explain where I've been coming from. I know this is like kind of a longer video. I've literally been recording for 30 minutes, which I'm surprised that I haven't coughed as much as I do have been, because seriously, it hurts to talk right now because I'm sick. But, it's still something I wanted to talk about, and I'm excited to finally have this out there. And, maybe someone will disagree. Most of you will disagree with me, but maybe I'll find someone who agrees with me. And I hope that you guys, I hope that if you do enjoy the Spider-Man movies, still, cool. I hope this doesn't kind of ruin your experience. That would never be my point of this video. My point of this video is just to explain my frustration and just how I've been feeling, and kind of explain some of the stupid things that I think people say about these movies and they kind of just misunderstand. And I hope some people will come to maybe realize things, some observations about these movies they didn't think about before, and also just, come to understand my point of view. And if you still enjoy the Spider-Man movies, cool. Continue doing that. I'm just done with them. I just want to explain why I'm not going to be covering them anymore.